Their devices, cell phones, etc. At 6 o'clock, I call this meeting of the Saginaw City Council to order. Please rise for the pledges. I pledge allegiance. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. Item 2 is the invocation. Do we have I don't see anybody. Do I have a volunteer? It can be staff, it can be from the audience who would love to give the invocation. Anybody feeling it? I mean, I can do it if y'all want. You want to do it, Nikki?
I can do it, yeah. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to be here today, and please allow us to conduct Saginaw business and with you in mind. Also, at this time, I would like to say prayer for all of the residents of Texas who was affected by these hard storms this past weekend. May they take shelter in you, and may they have solace. Amen.
Thank you, Nikki. Item 1D is audience participation. You can see the city secretary and fill out one of these forms if you wish to speak on any posted item. We can only talk about items that are on the posted agenda. 2 is the consent agenda. 2A is action regarding minutes of May 21st. 2B is action regarding Chapter 380 Economic Development Agreement incentive with Fuel City. 2C is action regarding the funding of Independence Day celebration event. 2D is action regarding ball field at Willow Creek Park infield improvements. Questions, comments on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as approved, as presented.
Okay. For a second. Brack, second. Motion passes. Let the record reflect we do have a quorum. Councilmember Big Horse is unable to attend. 3A is employee recognition and presentation. City Manager Gabe Rain.
Mayor and council, this time we don't have any employee recognitions, but the police department has one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Mr. Roy Wiederbrook. Roy is a valued team member of the police department. To list a couple of his accomplishments, Roy was a graduate of the First Citizens Police Academy in 2008. After completing the CPA, he expressed an interest in volunteering in the PD, which became a reality in 2009. During this time with the PD, Roy has taken on inventory control for CID, has served as our crime victims assistance liaison, and taken on admin duties for detectives and property and records personnel. Roy has been instrumental in coordinating 17 Citizens Police Academies and 7 Junior Police Academies, every academy since his graduation. He's also been instrumental in our Citizens Foot Patrol program and the DEA Drug Take-Back program. He has been a member of and served as an officer of the Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association since his graduation. Roy is recipient of the Saginaw Police Department Civilian of the Year Award in 2012. And this November, Roy will have completed 15 years of volunteer service with the PD and logged more than 5,000 volunteer hours. Roy's attitude is always very positive, and his willingness to step in and help shows his dedication to our department. And for these reasons, Roy was nominated for the Hometown Hero, which he received back on May 16th. So I would like to thank Roy for his dedicated service to the PD and for everything that he does for us. And Roy, really and truly, without you, our department would be lost because you do so much for us. So I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Anything else? Well, I have one thing. This weekend, several of us are going to Denver for the All-American Cities Award competition. We were nominated once again this year. We are a finalist. We were a finalist last year as well. We did not win. There are 20 finalists, and you go make a presentation, and the top 10 are picked as All-American cities. We were just practicing. We have a great story this year, and hopefully we'll bring back a win. And I appreciate Pedro wherever he is, for coordinating this, and Lee as well for putting this together. It's a lot of work. It's a great representation of our city and all the cool stuff we're doing, so look forward to that. All right, 3B, Tarrant County Appraisal District Presentation. Joe Don Bobbitt. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joe Don Bobbitt. I'm the new chief appraiser. I've been in the position since February 1st. I was hired to help improve relationships with entities and with the taxpayers, hopefully. Communication and transparency are key to what we do and moving forward. Part of that, we did suffer a ransomware attack March 21st, and within 25 days, we were outwardly facing. We were, for the most part, up and operational. We kind of focused on getting the outward tools and capabilities back to the public. That way they could protest in timely. And so one of the major part of that the board initiated was communication with the public, the media, and the entities, trying to make sure everybody was aware of what happened and why we were impacted. And so since then, we've taken several initiatives. The board has authorized us to spend $600,000 to $1 million trying to kind of shore up everything that we've had. We had 10 to 15-year-old computers and servers and just stuff that has kind of accumulated over a lack of being fiscally conservative or overly fiscally conservative for almost a decade or more. In the breach, there were less than 300 people that were affected. We went through the data that was compromised. We scrubbed it. We had a law firm that scrubbed it additionally. And then the people that we did find that had their social security numbers or driver's license compromised, those people were contacted by the law firm. So even though it is a big deal for those 300 people overall with 2 million residents in the county, we were grateful that it was as small as it was, even though we don't want to the impact it has on those 300 people. We are moving forward with strategic cloud hosting for most of our services and platforms, and we want to make sure that everything is kind of segmented and the systems don't cross-communicate, so if something doesn't become compromised, it can't spread like wildfire through the entire system and through, hopefully, to the entities or everything else. So we do have a comprehensive plan moving forward to try to shore everything up. We also, one of the big issues that when I was hired was our mass appraisal system. It was an issue back in 2014, has been kind of an issue going forward. It seems to be well hated across the county, and so we are doing a request for proposals. So we will be replacing the system hopefully in the next 2 years. My goal is August 2025 to have it in place, and it should help with the entities, the reports that we provide to the city. It should help provide more information. Hopefully it'll help everybody. Right now, we expect 200,000 to 250,000 protests. So right now, we already have a little over 200,000 currently received. We have not reached the final deadline yet. So, but right now, we're resolving about 90% with my staff. And so if people come in and visit with us, we resolve 90%. We're trying to be the kinder, friendlier appraisal district than we have been in the past. Average wait time is around 15 minutes. And so far, we're trying to keep that down. We realize how much time it is and impact on taxpayers, and we're trying to keep that in mind.
You mentioned the protest deadline. When is the deadline?
For residential properties, it was the 24th of June, or of May. And so for most properties, it has passed. If you have not received a notice of hearing yet, notice of appraised value, that deadline will be 30 days from when we send it out. There is also a couple other methods. If you did not receive one, you can file a letter saying you did not receive a notice of a value, and that allows you additional time. But overall, we just want to come, meet everybody. We're making the rounds through the entities and give you all a chance to ask any questions if y'all had any concerns with the district or the ransomware attack.
Council questions? Mary, please.
I was just wondering, when we do our budgeting, we of course have to wait till we get the final
Appraisal roll?
amount,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
know, that the property is worth. And is there any way that could be sped up?
July 25th is the deadline, the state deadline, that we have to certify the roll and give it to the taxing entities. Right now, with 250,000 protests, it's difficult to get that done. Like April 1st is when we're supposed to send out notices. And so it's a very short window to get all those protests resolved and provide that information to y'all. So even we have to have 95% complete by July 25th of the hearings. So
So I was thinking about the deadline to protest, but I wasn't thinking about how long it would take you to go through those protests.
Yes, ma'am.
So you get it to the cities as fast as humanly possible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions?
Can I make one comment about that? I work with the appraisal district. I'm the one that gets the values and calculates the tax rates. And I want to say we take for granted, because we always get them July 25th or even a few days before, and we take that for granted, but there are many other districts that do not meet that deadline. So it's a rush to get everything done, but I appreciate the timeliness that we always get the values when we're supposed to, and even the interim values as promised.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I did go to the protest mine, and I got there, was like third or fourth in line, was in and out in less than 10 minutes, and I got what I needed, so I was happy. They've done a lot of work. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
So do you all track how many, when people go to protest, do you track how many people leave from the protest, say, maybe not happy, but at least satisfied that they got a fair shake versus not? Have any data for that, or?
I know 90% we resolve with my staff, so about 10% go to, there were 20,000 formal hearings last year.
Yeah,
And out of those, I don't know how many felt like they got what they wanted or was a fair number. We're looking at a SurveyMonkey tool. We have a new NemoQ system, so basically when you come in, you get a ticket, and that way we can kind of track you and see how long it takes for you to get in and out. And so part of that, we can put a QR code or a survey link. That way, when you get done, you can leave and you can answer the survey and basically tell us, how pleased were you with your visit. That way we can, hopefully at the end of the year, we will have some feedback on specific numbers like that.
and I think you alluded to, if they're unhappy, is there a way to test that?
Yes, sir.
How is that?
There is a binding arbitration, which is between $450 to $1,000, depending on the value of the property, whether it's residential or commercial. Or you can file a lawsuit with district court. And so that is quite a bit more expensive than, $450 for the average homestead. And so most residences will go to arbitration, and it may take 6 months before it gets scheduled, but it's an outside arbitrator that hears the case, and you have about an hour to present, versus like at a formal hearing, you have a 15-minute window to get all of it done at one time, and people are usually frustrated by that amount of time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple comments. I've been on city council a long time, and this is the first time we had a chief appraiser from TAD show up, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate your willingness to come out and, talk to us and answer questions. That takes a lot of guts, and it's transparency, and really appreciate that. That's
Yes, sir.
awesome. I know TAD is a very difficult job. I get a lot of feedback about that, but folks have to remember that TAD is doing a job that has to be done, and appraised values in Tarrant County have gone up. They just have. You can sell your house for so much more than you could 10 years ago. It's ridiculous. So are they reflecting reality? Absolutely. Is it a challenge, and people don't like taxes, and y'all bear the brunt of that, and that's unfortunate, but so do we. So,
Yes, sir.
But I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate you making the rounds and talking to folks and putting a name with a face with a name. And so for y'all coming, just thank you so much for coming by. Any other questions? I don't want to let him off easy, but well, hopefully we can be in touch, and we'll talk to you again. But thank you so much for coming out, both of you guys, gentlemen. We
Yes, sir.
appreciate it. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank y'all.
All right, moving forward, item 3C, 2024-25 budget workshop. Kim Quinn.
Well, this ties in really nicely with what we just talked about as far as appraisals. So some of this information, a few of you have seen many times. I'm going to go over it just because we only talk about it once a year, and we've got a new council member. Stop me as you have questions, and as always, if you don't have more in-depth questions, you know where I'm at. I'm happy to talk tax rate anytime. Okay. So I'm first going to start by saying we always talk about the budget, we approve the budget, but actually the budget is 13 different budgets. We have 13 different funds that comprise the budget. And I don't know, those of you who were here when Dan was an interim, he described it in a great way that I had never really thought about it, but it's kind of almost like 13 different little businesses. Each fund, the revenues and the expenditures have to be balanced. I'm not going to go through all of the funds, but we'll talk about a few of the highlights in the next few slides. This is the total of the 23-24, our current fiscal year revised budget. So the budget that was adopted plus the mid-year revisions are $99.4 million. And then the pie chart just gives you an idea of the significance of each of the funds. The capital projects fund, the big orange piece there, will fluctuate from year to year depending on how many projects this year and the last few years happen to have been big ones. The big projects, obviously the Knowles project and the Library and Senior Center are huge. The general fund is usually a pretty significant part of the overall budget, as well as the enterprise fund, which is water and wastewater, and the debt service fund. We talk about this every year too, the balanced budget. So we want to make sure that the funding sources are adequate to cover the funding uses. The revenues are enough to pay for the expenses. That's a pretty easy to understand concept. And then we also talk about the structurally balanced budget, and that's a little trickier, and I have a slide here because we've had some issues in the past. I'm trying to make a picture and make it more clear, but basically when we say structurally balanced budget, we want the ongoing revenues or the ongoing sources of funds to cover the ongoing uses of funds, and we can pay for one-time uses with one-time expenses, with one-time sources like fund balance. It's kind of like I've described it before as you don't want to be paying for your groceries out of your savings account, right? You want to save your savings account for things like when your washer and dryer break or you need a new refrigerator. You want to pay for those sporadic things with money that you have that you know is not necessarily going to be replenished or ongoing. And last year, I was trying to think of a way to make a picture because sometimes explaining it isn't as clear as maybe seeing it. So what I'm trying to show here is ongoing revenues, the yellow blob, equal our ongoing expenses, which is the green blob, and then the blue part is we could consider maybe fund balance or a one-time revenues and expenses. So if you've got a larger blue cylinder and you're paying for a one-time expense, your one-time revenues, your balance, is going to go down a little bit. And that's okay because it's not going to be recurring. But if you look at, I labeled it year 2, you've got ongoing revenue, but if you add that expense and it's an ongoing expense, and you're okay in year 2, right? Because you still have a balance, but it's not going to continue to be that way. Eventually, if you keep adding that ongoing expense without having ongoing revenue, your one-time revenue, your one-time funding sources are going to go away and you're going to have a deficit. So that's just an elementary way to explain what we've talked about in the past, but I thought maybe that picture might help a
Just so
little bit.
people know, we do not run at a deficit ever, so
No,
please
sir.
don't think this is like a reality. Kim is just showing an example of how things would work, so.
Yes, sir, just trying to explain when we talk about structurally balanced budget. That's what this was trying to do. So, not going to belabor that point, but just a different way of explaining it. So as far as the revenue, which it gets a lot of attention, obviously, is the tax levy, the property tax revenue, which are major sources of fundings for the general fund and the debt service fund. And the way that we calculate the tax levy or the tax revenue is the base, which is the property values, which we get from TAD, Tarrant Appraisal District, times the rate, which is the tax rate that you all adopt as part of the budget process. And that's just a simple equation. The tax levy is the base times the rate. It's all simplified, but basically that's what it is. Our property tax rate, just like the budget, we say the tax rate, but really the tax rate is two pieces to it. And if you've noticed the ordinance that we adopted, we adopt each rate separately. There's the M&O, which stands for Maintenance and Operations. That's the portion that goes to the general fund, and it funds the general operations, police, fire, the library, the street department, the parks, the rec center. all of those general fund activities. And then there's also the piece for interest and sinking. That's we call it INS sometimes. That's the portion that goes to debt service. That's where we pay our bonds. When we sell bonds, we're borrowing money, and we have to pay back the principal and interest, and the debt service fund is where we do that. The graph just shows out of the total tax rate, our current tax rate is the 49.8769 cents. 53% of the tax rate is for maintenance and operations, 47% to interest and sinking, the debt service piece of it. Yes, ma'am.
I remember several years ago, there was a big debate among the city council about the ratio between M&O and INS. Is there a recognized formula for you should have X number of dollars more in one fund than the other, or X percent more? It was a big issue several years ago. I never quite understood it.
We do have some guidelines in our financial management policies, but I would say you can't really, there's not a standard. There's many factors, like, for example, a city that's just starting out and has building a lot of infrastructure may have more debt side than operating, or have more than the average city. And like us, there's also cities where you're redoing some of the infrastructure, and so that's also, so it's hard, there's not a formula that we can give. It really depends maybe on the timing of the city and the things that are going on.
I mean, we passed a bond election in 2021, and our INS was lower before that. Since we've sold bonds and built things, it's gone up because that's what the citizens want. So that's, it does go in waves. You're right.
So with that, with the ratio, you may not know this exactly, but when would that ratio then start negatively impacting our rating, city rating? Like, I think we're A+ right now, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look at that. They look mostly if we're in compliance with our financial management policies, which has been approved by the city council. And every year, before we present them to you, we make sure that we're in compliance. And there's different ratios that we look at.
Right.
Anything else? Okay. Everybody likes to see this graph. This is the where your tax dollar goes graph. And when people get their tax bill, they kind of just lump it all together. But really, the majority of the tax bill goes to the school district. This is based on current values and the current tax rate in 23-24. Our average valued residential property was $248,000. So based on the different entities' tax rates, the average tax bill would have been $4,242. Of that, $1,241 goes to the city, or 29%. And this is with no exemptions. I'm going to talk about the exemptions here in the next slide, but this is just for your average value and an average homeowner. The way that the property tax exemptions, I get this question quite a bit, work is that, and I'm just rounding numbers here, but if you say you have an appraised value of $200,000 and you're a senior, you reduce your appraised value by whatever the exemption is, in this case $100,000, and then the tax rate, instead of being applied to your $200,000 value, would be applied to the taxable value, which would be $100,000. So in the example that I just gave you, if a senior owned an average valued home, the $248,000, then that would be, their taxable value would be $148,000. Based on the current tax rate, they pay $741, which is $500 less than the average person without the exemption. So just to give you an idea of how significant that $100,000 property tax exemption is. And I thought, I don't know if you'll want to talk about exemptions at this point, or I know the daycare exemption is later on in the agenda, but Councilmember Falegi also wanted to talk about a senior tax ceiling, so I put that on the slide here too. I do want to say that exemptions for them to apply to the 24 tax bills that will be going out October 1st have to be submitted to TAD by July 1st. So we would need to have discussion tonight or approval, and then we still have one council meeting, which would be the next council meeting, that an ordinance could be adopted and then submitted to TAD by July 1st. So, did you want to have a discussion?
Yeah, I've had a couple seniors that have asked about a tax freeze, and looking at some of the cities across the Metroplex, some of them have it, but they don't have a $100,000 exemption either. So to me, I struggle with it. I think the $100,000 is fair. I think it's basically double dipping if we go to doing a ceiling as well.
Yeah, you're right. So I looked at Tarrant County, and there's only one city that has a higher exemption than the city of Saginaw, and that's Flower Mound with $150,000. We're the second highest in all of Tarrant County with $100,000. And then the third highest is the city of Grapevine, which is $75,000. So our seniors really do get a significant break.
Wait, is Flower Mound in Tarrant County?
Part of it is.
Oh, part of it is, not the whole thing, okay.
So do any of them have the ceiling as well, or do they all just have the exemption?
The Flower Mound does not. The city of Grapevine does. The city of yeah. So I would say that, and we had this discussion when we talked about when we increased the exemption, there's a more direct impact to the seniors with an exemption versus a ceiling. And then the other advantage is with the exemption, if values continue to go up, the exemption can be adjusted by the city council if you feel the need to do that.
I mean, we talked about some of this when we did the exemption as well. We talked a little bit about what might be fair. And you're right, the senior, that's a good point. The exemption can be adjusted. We can go up with that if we want to in the future. I'm hesitant to do a ceiling at this point. I think our exemption does well, and we can look at raising it in the future if we want to. That's certainly within our purview. So that might be the good way to look forward. And as you mentioned, it's a pretty tight window to do anything right now, but I think the 100,000 certainly helps.
Okay, we can wait and talk about the daycare exemption. I know that's a separate agenda item if that's your pleasure. Okay.
So, Paul, do you think we need to dig into that deeper, or?
No, I mean, I brought it up for a resident, but the more I've looked at it, I think the highest one I saw was, believe North Richland Hills was $50,000 exemption, and then they had the ceiling. So I think it's more advantageous to the seniors to keep it the way we have it, and then it's easy, as the mayor said, if we want to increase it, to 110 or 120,000, we can do that very easily each year, versus the ceiling is the ceiling.
I do want to say, make sure everybody understands, when we do increase an exemption or approve a tax ceiling, you're taking away from the tax base, right? So it's less levy unless you increase the rate, and so the people not getting the ceiling or the exemption are paying more of their share, if you will, based on the value of the property.
Actually, there's one big pie, and if you do that, you're taking a slice out of it.
Correct.
Less there for the others to eat. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's no more discussion about that, we'll talk a little bit about tax rate terminology. There are multiple tax rates that we are legally required to calculate, and I wanted to explain those a little bit to you. We not only calculate them, but legally we are required to, I report them to the city council, y'all vote on it. And then we also have to advertise it. We do it on the website, the newspaper, it's on the TAD website and the Tarrant County website. So we're very transparent and following all of the legalities when we're dealing with the tax rate. One of the tax rates that we calculate is called the no new revenue tax rate, and we could look at that as a starting point on all the other tax rates that are required to be calculated are based on, if you will. So the no new revenue tax rate is the property tax rate that generates the same total property taxes on the same properties as the previous year. So if you think about the equation that we talked about earlier, the tax revenue is the base times the rate. So if overall the values go up, the base goes up, your tax rate's going to go down. You're still collecting the same amount of taxes, but because your values are up, your rate's going down. And it hasn't happened for many years, but it could happen in the other direction as well. So if values were to decrease, the rate to generate the same amount of revenue would have to go up. And it wouldn't be considered a tax rate increase, tax rate decrease, because it's the same amount of revenue based on those same properties. The other thing I want to say, because I know we've had questions in the past, is all of these are calculated based on the total amount. If your property happens to be increased by 15%, but the average only increases by 10%, even if we were to adopt the no new revenue tax rate, your taxes could go up because your rate has gone up more than the average. So all of these rates are calculated based on the total and not each individual property.
So there's been a lot of talk, and I've been asked this, that the thing going around of cities sign up to no net new revenue. And I think a lot of, it's a very good, very easy to get people behind that. You know, your taxes absolutely don't go up from one year to the other. And it would be good if we could explain that, exactly what that's meant and, you know, what it means to the city or, you know, for that.
So the no new revenue tax rate would mean that we would collect, and not including any added value, but this is just based on the same properties as the previous year to collect the same amount of revenue. And this is the same amount of total tax revenue. So if you issue debt and your debt service is going up, then you would have to eat that total amount in the no new revenue tax rate. Not to mention that we all are well aware that the cost of everything has gone up. So in order to keep you couldn't keep your current operations with the current level of taxes because things are going up. So something's going to have to be cut somewhere. In order to provide the same level of service, you couldn't do it. You would have to decrease services somewhere based on the no new revenue tax rate. And that would be exacerbated if your debt service was going up in any given year, because they're talking total tax rate. The next tax rate that we're going to talk about, which is the voter approval tax rate, takes into account any increases or decreases on the debt service side.
So basically, the no new revenue rate only works in areas that are having a ton of growth, where they have additional income coming in then.
It could, but you would also consider, if you're having huge amounts of growth, that the cost of your services are going to go up as well, right? You're providing services to more people.
So when a city like ours sends out a bond and the citizens vote for that bond, and with the understanding it's going to cost over the next, say, 20 years, that's a standard bond. If you do the no net new revenue, then when the city then goes to implement within the bond, that would force them then to figure out something in their budget to cut so they could afford that bond.
You're right. You would be sacrificing on the operating side, the general fund side. You would, if your debt side's going up, you're obligated to pay that debt service. And if that's going up, you'd have to cut on the operating side.
Right. So they would have, you're sacrificing pre-existing services then to cover that new bond.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the no new revenue tax rate. The voter approval tax rate is a little bit different. It takes it's the property tax rate that generates an increase of 3.5% more on the operating revenue than last year, and then it adds on top of that whatever is required for your debt service. So this is the tax rate that allows for 3.5% growth on your operating side and covers the debt side. It's not penalizing you on the operating side for any increase that may happen on the debt side. Any tax rate that is adopted that's over the voter approval tax rate could trigger an automatic election on the uniform election date in November, with a few exceptions. And one of the exceptions is the de minimis tax rate. And the de minimis tax rate is available to taxing entities that have a population of less than 30,000. And what this does is it's calculated by taking the no new revenue tax rate on the operating side plus the rate that will generate an additional $500,000 in revenue, and then add to that the debt service tax rate. So this is an exception to the automatic election if you go over the voter approval rate. The only caveat with this rate is that if you are contemplating using this rate, you need to use the accelerated budget timetable. So you count back 78 days from the uniform election date. This year it's November 5th. And so that's the only, I don't want to say downside, but that's the wrinkle in this. And if you recall, the last few years, we have not adopted the de minimis tax rate, but we have followed the accelerated timetable to give us the option if that is the choice to do. And so that's what our budget calendar this year is based on as well.
Have we ever used a de minimis tax rate?
No, we have not.
Yeah, I know 3 years ago we seriously talked about it, but it didn't come out, so.
Correct. Last year, we adopted the voter approval rate, which, and I didn't go into, I'm simplifying things, but there was also an unused incremental rate. So if you don't go up your 3.5% every year, you can save that and add it, and then after 3 years, it goes away if you don't use it. So last year, our voter approval rate was more than the 3.5%, because we had unused incremental rates from the last 2 years. And so that's why we went with the voter approval rate, but it was not as high as the de minimis rate. We did not go as high as the de minimis rate, even though we followed the accelerated calendar to give us that flexibility if we decided that we might need to do that.
Do we have any unused incremental this year if we needed it?
No, sir, and I don't have a slide on the unused incremental rate because this is what's going on in Austin. They're recalculating, they're redoing the rules on how we calculate the unused incremental rate. We used, and I'm sorry if I'm going into too much detail, I'm kind of a nerd in this way, but so it used to be calculated by the pennies that we didn't use, and what they're going to do, what I hear they're going to do, is use the dollar amount instead. And so they're recalculating how we're supposed to, they're redoing the equation on how we calculate the unused incremental rate. But we used it up last year. Depending on how the calculation winds up and how they make us do the calculation, we might have a little bit, but probably not much.
So asking you to look into your crystal ball, using your past year, what's the chances of us using the de minimis tax rate this year, do you think?
So the other factor in all of this is we have the sales tax, we have a 0.5-cent sales tax to reduce the property tax rate. And so that's also factored into the calculation, which I didn't get into the weeds when I was explaining the basics. This year, we had a significant audit adjustment of about $500,000. And so that's going to throw our tax rate calculations way out of whack because I have to consider that amount. They won't let me adjust for the audit adjustment. We should just do what is the base rate, not without the audit, so it's going to throw us off. So it's hard to predict. But it is possible that the voter approval tax rate would be higher than the de minimis tax rate because of that anomaly.
Thanks.
Sure. And I won't know any of it for sure with absolute certainty until July 25th.
And that's the rub on this whole thing. We start talking about, we don't know all the data yet. We're asking her to speculate, which is unfair. We have an idea, but we don't know all the final data yet till the end of July, and that's what the TAD folks talked about. So it's hard for us to make any real decisions until we get that, and then we have to make pretty quick decisions, unfortunately.
That's right, and that's the downside of using the accelerated calendar, but we do the work because that gives us the most flexibility, gives you all the most flexibility in making the decisions and having the more choices. But knowing that when we get those final rates, we have all these decisions to make, that's why this is the first of several workshops to kind of start getting you thinking about what the issues are. And so we'll continue to do that in the past like we always have. So unused incremental rate, not going to go into a lot of detail. I don't think we'll have that this year, and it's still in flux depending on what the comptroller's office decides to do with it. So these are our next steps. As I said, we're going to continue to have budget presentations by fund at the next few council meetings. We will receive our certified values from TAD on the 25th, or maybe sometimes we get them a few days early. In order to meet the required accelerated schedule, we're going to have a couple of special council meetings on non-regular council meeting days. We would get our certified values on the 25th. That next Tuesday, we would need to have a special council meeting, which would be July 30th. And that's where we legally have to present the tax rate calculations to you all, and then it gets advertised from there. We would have our first budget public hearing on August 6th, which would be a regular city council meeting. And that is where the public is invited to come talk about the budget, their concerns. And then we have scheduled the Saturday council retreat. So that would be that next Saturday, the 10th, after you've had some input from the public that might help you make decisions.
The retreat, citizens can come to that retreat if they want to, right?
Yes, sir, it's a public meeting and it gets advertised. So that would be Saturday, the 10th. And then that next Tuesday, we would need to have an additional special city council meeting. It would be on a Tuesday. And that would be the date that we would be required if we were going with the de minimis tax rate to adopt the budget and adopt the tax rate.
And what's the de minimis limit? Is it the 13th, or what is the de minimis limit? De minimis calendar, I'm sorry.
You count back from the uniform election date.
Which is what?
78 days.
Which is what date?
We have to have it the 16th, I believe.
Okay.
And so I just chose the 13th because we usually have meetings on Tuesdays, but.
Do you get preliminary numbers from TAD to
Yes, sir, we've been getting values. We've had 2 preliminary values so far.
and what's that looking like? Good?
It's looking good. Our increased value is not as high as I was hoping. This next year will be more with the neighborhood behind y'all we'll have that value, and then we'll have, is it the cottages at Belt Mill are starting to be built? So that'll be more significant. We were about 32 million in new property. That was the Belt Mill development and the Taco Bueno and then the warehouse were the biggies this year. And overall values were up about 12 to 14%. It's in flux, right? Because people are still protesting, and so the values are still changing. Any more questions?
Did your preliminary values change very much from the first group to the second?
We lose on average from April until certified in July, 4 to 5% is the average. Now, it can change more or less, but average over the last 10 years, I would say 4 to 5% of lost value between April and certified in July.
Okay.
Questions for Kim? Anything else, Kim?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Great work. Fortunately, we will hear more from Kim as we move along this.
Send us these dates so I can put them on my calendar and make sure I'm. Okay, I looked, I didn't see it. Okay.
All right, moving forward, we are at 3D, workshop, city branding. Pedro.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just give me a second, I need to switch over on the broadcast side. All right, so this is the branding guideline workshop. Essentially, this is just a workshop to cover what a city brand guideline is, why the city needs it. It's not here, I'm not here to tell you, hey, the city needs a new logo, or we need to fix the logo. It's just me telling you, hey, this is what we're looking at. It is a work plan project, so that's my first slide. So,
Can I
city,
ask one
yes.
question? Is our logos, are they copyrighted, or they?
So I did have a chat with Bryn, and I think we're.
Yeah, I don't know in fact whether it is. It is eligible to be copyrighted, and I mentioned that our office can do it if we want.
Because I know that if it is copyrighted, if you don't follow it, then it violates it, and then anyone else could use it. So I guess what I'm saying is, not that anybody would want to use our beautiful logo, but if it isn't copyrighted.
So yeah, so essentially. Yeah, I was talking to Brent earlier.
Well, if it's not copyrighted, I guess I'm kind of confused why they couldn't use it, but okay.
Yeah, so I was talking to Brent earlier. So when you talk about copyright, so let's say we use this logo for example, we copyright that logo. If we start changing it, the logo that we changed to is no longer copyrighted. Brent, correct me if I'm wrong if I said that wrong.
Right.
We need to follow the guideline.
Yeah, so what I suggested is, it's a good idea to protect the intellectual property of the city. There is such a thing as a common law copyright claim for artistic work that you create yourself, but then that's an argument that you have to make, right? Yeah. So, but obviously if it's copyrighted and registered, with the U.S. Copyright Office, that's the best way to ensure that it's protected.
Is that what we're leading to here?
So once we do the guideline, the direction we're going to take, whatever we decide at the end, we're going to work with Bryn's office and we're going to make it trademark, copyright, or whatever the right terminology is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So work plan project, City Council adopted the work plan in 2024, and this is one of the work plan projects. And what is city branding? Branding is the act of defining the uniqueness of the city and then marketing that uniqueness to elevate the standing of the city on local, national, and global scale. Industry is called place branding. It's not called regular branding because we don't sell a product. We're not Coca-Cola, Microsoft. We are a city. We don't sell anything, but we provide a service to everybody. So that's why the term is place branding. And why do we need a guideline? Brand guidelines are a set of rules that define the overall look. They help build a brand identity for stakeholders that could be recognized all across platforms. So we're talking about print, digital, social media, all that. A comprehensive brand guideline outlines everything. So from the font that we use, the color palette that we use, stationery, so our business cards, our envelopes, and any special cases. So you got your hats, your pencils. That's what I mean by special cases. Currently, we have different variations of the logo being used across all departments, and we should consolidate city branding And the way to do it is to create a guideline that the primary logo, whichever logo we pick or what happens, we will base it off of that. That's called the primary logo. Right now, it's the city circle with the grain elevators. Now, industry standard is public safety always has a different sub-guideline because in case of an emergency, we want to be able to see the fire department's logo or the police department logo. So they will also have a guideline as well, so they could follow them on their departments. But we don't want to, it'll be nice to bring them on the fold, but we know as an industry, it's hard because they have a job to do when emergencies happen, and they look for the fire or the police guy. They don't look for the guy with the cool little logo, which will be nice. I know CPR. Oh, it didn't switch. There we go. So Saginaw needs to stay competitive. That is why we need a guideline. We want to be able to see that we have a good image. We are a great city, but sometimes if I hand a business card that looks different than the city manager's business card, than the economic development business card, people are going to say, why does Saginaw have like 5 different business cards or 5 different logos? It gives that perception. And why do we need a guideline? We don't currently have one right now. So we're going to go through. So this is a bunch of our logos that we have. I went back a little bit and looked. So great logos, great designs, but they're all different. Different color blue, different color yellow, different fonts. We have fonts that may not be visible from afar, so they might not be ADA compliant. And this is page 2. There's actually, if you fill it all up, we're about 3.5 pages. So as you can see, this is the primary logo in different ways. Excuse me. So essentially, again, different fonts, different logos, different design of the actual logo itself. Now, what are the next steps? So now we know what a guideline should, why we need it, what are the next steps? So anything that has to do with place branding means the community has to be involved. So we want to be able to get our stakeholders involved. So that is our community, which is our residents, community members, businesses, and city staff. So our next step, in my case, I will be going to the farmer's market on June 22nd with the survey I'm going to create so I could get some feedback from that, and I'll bring that over to you, which next step on potential timeline. We adopted the plan back in March. Yes,
The
yes.
survey, what's this survey going to ask them?
I'm actually going to reach out to other cities who have done this in the past to see what they have, and I could definitely, June 22nd, I'm trying to figure out if there's some council. I could definitely send that out, but it's just going to say what the current logo is, what you think about it. But again, I'm going to reach out to other cities who have done this in the past before.
Can we take a day, I mean, our aquatic center is probably the busiest thing going on right now in the summertime. Take a day there because you get a lot of traffic.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. I think 2 years ago, we had an intern at the rec center, and he gave us numbers on how many people went there, and you're right, it's absolutely popular. It's popping over there. On my drive back from the fire station, it was pretty popular. So yeah, I'll definitely take that into consideration, and let me write that down before I forget. Aquatic Center. So June 2024, Farmers Market Online Survey and the Aquatic Center, that's the initial outreach. We'll take the whole month of June to do that. July, we'll definitely share those results, and then I believe that's a good time to see where the city council would like to move forward from there. And then,
Are you going to do anything online?
yeah, online survey. And then council will give direction to which way we're going to go.
One more event would be the concert in the park.
Yeah, June 20th, yes. Also, the library's having events as well, so I'll reach out to Ellen. Is she behind me? Yes. I'll reach out to you, Ellen. We'll do some stuff with you guys too.
Oh, I see, and online survey.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, because we talked, we'll add farmer's market, comma, what we said, and online survey. Then, essentially, whatever we present to you and as city council members, what direction y'all would like to take, we'll definitely go for it. So our options are essentially keep the current logo, but create a guideline. So all departments could essentially know, like, hey, this is the font we're going to use, this is the color palette we're going to use, this is how you're going to lay it out. And the second option is do a whole rebrand, refresh, and we'll move from there. So in your packets, I did include some proposals from different vendors who have done this before in municipalities. And the range are from 6,000 to 65, and the higher the range is the rebrand, the refresh. So with that, I think that's my last slide.
I have a question.
Oh, those are my, we emailed out this presentation. If you click on the links, they'll get you to branding guidelines from other cities. And those are my references, because I decided to research this much more than a simple research. And yeah, I'll take, yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so have you figured out how much it would cost if you rebrand? T-shirts, hats, decals, all the city paperwork and everything would have to be changed and all that stuff. Have y'all figured out how much that's gonna be?
So one of the vendors, actually two of the vendors actually have an implementation guideline. So they give you the guideline, but they also have an implementation, and they will give us the cost of how everything goes. But we're not just gonna overnight just go and just do
Well,
everything.
that's what I'm wondering about, is because if you're gonna rebrand everything will have to be changed.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that in
You know,
phases.
that's a lot of money.
We'll do that in phases. I think we'll do half of the vehicles one year, half the vehicles the other year. Or, like Randy said earlier, Pedro, you're gonna go up top and paint the water tower yourself, which I'm ready for that, so.
I
You
think
just
that
give
would
me
be
a,
very
HR
expensive.
might be disappointed in the risk management side of it, but
'Cause
we'll
how
go
many
up there and paint
t-shirt-
it.
How many shirts do our employees wear in their hats? and-
Yeah, we'll definitely, I can't promise you I could get that cost, but I could definitely see which direction we're gonna go with and potentially talk to the vendor.
I
That
think
do
we
that, they don't, I mean, those are things that's considered a rolling, so you would, when you rebrand it, when they got new T-shirts or new hats, they would come with the new logo.
Well, I understand that, but how many employees do we have that, have?
We would just go over time.
Yeah,
as
so last year on my budget request, I actually included like phase one of budget, or phase one of brand, and I think I did those in the 5-year plan, and I did those in phases. I didn't include them this year because I didn't know what direction we were going with. But yeah, it's not gonna be we need to do this in a year. It's more like,
just think we need
let's
to know,
phase it
you know.
into it, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Thank
I
you,
mean,
sir.
again, I wouldn't think that we'd go out here and say, okay, we're gonna pull all of our people who wears, coats that's got the Saginaw brand on it, pull them back and buy them brand new ones just because of logo. What we'd do is we'd say, when they wear their existing coat out.
Correct.
When they get the new one, it gets a new branding.
Also, we could wear Vintage
So
Day as well.
there shouldn't be any extra cost for say to that. We would use up our pre-existing stock and then move to the new one.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, how often do y'all go through uniforms? Yeah, so they change them out. I do know,
On the guidelines, there's not gonna be a time limit on when you have to have everything done.
we could definitely add that if y'all wish, but it's gonna be more like moving forward, anytime you do, for example, if like we implemented it today, anything that we do forward or that we order will have to be part of the guideline. But if it's new, not like, oh, now we have to replace everything, that's happened. So
We're not gonna make Jared take off his shirt, and put on a new one immediately. He can wear that for a while. so.
definitely can.
Me too, I don't wanna take this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next thing is, you'd mentioned a total rebrand versus just, I'll call it a facelift. To me, I'll be honest with you, I like our basic logo. So I would not lean towards, unless somebody can show me how it would benefit the citizens to do a total rebrand. Because
Okay,
it seems
yeah.
like to me that would be a huge expense.
I think part of what we're asking is make sure that everybody in Saginaw uses the same brand as well. That's part of the issue.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
Everyone's
yeah.
willing to use
Well,
them.
that's what I'm saying.
That's sort of what we're looking
But
at.
part of the things was, do we just go off and create a brand-new brand? Or do we just, like, say, take that one and the ones we got and say, okay, out of these, this is exactly the color, everything it's gonna look. So we already start with something like that and then tweak it.
That's where I see it going.
Yeah, yeah.
That's sort of what Pedro is offering up.
Yeah.
And let the citizens have a.
So do y'all want me to reach out to residents on this? It's no action today, but a good direction will be good for me to
Yeah.
take this forward.
I mean, absolutely, I think we need to do this. We need to get consistent. I don't want to go to the citizens with DC white light. In other words, hey, what kind of brand would you like to have? I'd like to go with a focus. Here's our brands. How do you somehow I'd like to narrow it down to,
Like, here's our logo, what would you like to
What would you
What are
like?
some ideas to change or something
Change
you'd like
or
to
make
see
it
different?
So if we're
on it?
just doing a facelift for this one, I don't
Yeah.
think we have to reach out to residents. It's more of like typography type of deal. But if we are doing a full rebrand, yeah, we definitely want to involve them.
Yeah, I got no problem. I'm with Paul. I think we reach out to citizens. I think that's great. I always believe in keeping the citizens, but I think it's more reach out to them as this is a facelift. What would you change of our existing one? Unless my other council members think that we need a total new. Yeah.
I mean, and as part of our question,
Yeah, yeah.
a question for Brand, do we want to trademark this? Do we want to go to the expense, and is that worth it, and what would that get us? That's part of this question.
Yeah, so my personal experience in another city is the city decided to trademark the logo because council member candidates were using it on their campaign signs to give the impression that the city was endorsing them for office. And so they decided enough is enough, and across the board. They also trademarked the PD logo and the fire department logo.
So that's not a super expensive expense, right? It's
Correct.
just mainly just filling out forms and stuff.
That's right, filling out the forms and it's a waiting game.
Is it worth our time and effort, and money to do that? What would that get us? What would that gain?
It would allow, so, recall I talked about the common law copyright issue. So we had a council, well, not a council member, an individual who was running for council, actually a former council member, and he used the logo on his campaign signs, and we sent him a cease and desist letter, and he said, this is going in the garbage, I don't care what you say. There's some argument too, there's a City of Houston case that essentially held that the city seal, which is what Janice puts on the ordinances, et cetera, that city seals cannot be copyrighted because of the 1924 Hatch Act. Don't quote me on the year. It's bizarre, bizarre twist of the law. And he basically wrote back and said, this is the city seal, it's not the logo, it's not trademarked, I'm not going to agree to do it, and I'm going to continue to use the city's logo on all of my campaign signs. So in response to that, it was trademarked. No one has tried to use it since, so we really haven't had that conflict, but it certainly improves our position to send a copy of the U.S. Trademark Office's copyright letter to the person if we wanted to send a cease and desist letter.
And so we need to do her seal too, right?
So no, so the seal is unable to be trademarked, but no one uses the seal, right? It's just that circle that says City of Saginaw with a star. So, yeah.
I mean, a couple years ago, when we had that business that did our logo, would our position have been strengthened if we had?
Yes, so thank you for reminding me of that, I'd forgotten about that, right? So when we send a letter saying, please stop using our logo, it's the city's intellectual property, I think we gained compliance, but it was voluntary. It would certainly make, my job easier if I had a document supporting it.
But I think we helped her, so she didn't lose anything, did she?
No, we made her whole, but yeah. But I think, would y'all like to put that on Pedro's agenda as well, to trademark?
Yeah.
Copyright? I think that's important.
Yep, I agree. Absolutely.
Mary, you good with that? Okay. You got direction, Pedro?
I'm writing it down, so
You good?
sounds good.
Any other questions for Pedro? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank
Appreciate
you
it, buddy. All right. 3E, discussion item, Texas Comptroller Transparency Star Program. Councilmember Brack St. Clair.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This was an item that I had discovered a couple of months ago, just going to other city websites and looking at how they were doing things, and noticing that they had these transparency stars that they could post on it. So I started looking into what does it take to get it, and you can get a total of 6 different transparency stars. And basically, it's just somebody at the Texas Comptroller's office goes through your website, and they look and make sure that you have the right information presented in the right way on your website, and the goal is for transparency's sake, so that people can get access to information quickly and easily. And so it's something that I think we should look into moving forward with, and seeing if we can get some of those stars just to show useful charts and graphs, and then if anybody's interested in looking at the ledger or anything regarding city expenses and income, they can view it quickly.
I mean, I would fully support that. I don't know what all it would take, but I feel we're transparent, so let's go into it and see what it would take to make it official. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions?
I want to know what Kim thinks about it.
I talked with Councilmember Sinclair, and Elizabeth, our finance manager, is working on it. So the information that is required is pretty much already out on our website. It just needs to be in a specific format. I don't think once we so the big thing is going to be we need 3 years of historical data in this format. So that's going to take a little bit of time. But once we get it going and posted to the website in an easier way, a more apparent way, because like I said, it's already on there. You have to search a little bit for it. This would be more in your face. This is click on here, and this is going to get you the information that you're looking for. So I don't think it's going to be a huge amount of staff time, just the initial getting it set up and the 3 years of historical data. But all the information is available currently, just not in the format that's required to get the transparency stars.
So all the costs will just be staff time?
Yes, ma'am. I don't think there's a cost to the
There's
application.
no cost to apply. There's no deadlines or anything. The Texas Comptroller's Office will go back through and they'll review your website every few months and just make sure that you stay in compliance. And then if they notice something, then they ping you and say, hey, you need to fix this portion, or you're no longer in compliance, and you got to update your stuff.
With all the awards y'all have in the finance department, I say that would be 6 stars for the first.
I can tell you, last year, remember Gabe, I talked to you about this, because this has already came up a few times in different feeds on the internet about how, and every time I've seen it come up, it's used as a negative to us, that we are not transparent, that, that the comp controller does not recognize us as being transparent. So, I'm 100% for this, is, to remove that, and we're doing it, we're just not doing it in the right format.
Right.
You know,
Well, and the initial, like some of the charts and everything,
Yeah.
those won't even have to be updated, but like once a year.
Right.
When you do your annual budgeting and stuff. But then it's just the ledgers that you have to keep up with monthly. And there's some challenges with that and the accounting software that we have, combining some of the information, how the state wants to have it seen.
Yeah.
And how it's categorized. So once we work through those challenges, then I think it should be pretty minimal.
Okay, I think everybody's in favor of moving forward with this, and we appreciate appreciate Brack bringing it up. We can let Brack be the council liaison and let Kim and her team move forward. So, thank you. Great. All right, we're at 4A. Consideration action regarding ordinance 2024-08, property tax exemption for child care facilities. Mayor Pro Tem Paul Falegi and Mary Copeland, council member.
I'll let Mary, she kind of drove this.
Yes, Bryn brought this to our attention in our first April meeting, that this has to do to refresh your memory. In the November election, the state of Texas, by a 64.8%, approved Proposition 2, Senate Bill 1145, and this would allow cities to forgive either as much as 50% or even 100% of the property taxes that daycares have to pay every year. And this is to help keep them open, to help them provide better services for their young children. And we know a lot of daycare centers are closing all the time, and it actually helps our economy to have daycare centers open, because it allows more people to be in the workforce if they have affordable daycare. And also, if we were to approve the 100% full forgiveness, that would amount to about $12,000 of revenue that the city would not get. But that $12,000, just to put it in perspective, if you compare that to the amount that was in the general fund at the end of April, per Janice's report that she sends us every month, it would be 1/10 of 1% of the revenue that's in the general fund right now. So basically, almost nothing. So my feeling is it would be something we could do to help our daycare centers at almost no cost to the city. And I think we might have some representatives here from some of the daycares if they would like to speak.
Let's let council talk first, and then we'll get them up. I will get all of them up, absolutely. Paul, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, this, recently, I think Fort Worth adopted, I think they were 100%, if I remember right. Mike's not on. And more cities are doing this, so, with this in hand, if we do this exemption, I would hope that the daycares would pass this savings on to, improve their programs and different things that they're doing.
Well, I also know it's, and Brent can refresh our memory, it's qualifying childcare facilities. Not everyone is. Will you refresh our memory on how that works?
That's correct. That's correct. It's daycares that qualify for the, and I'm sorry if I don't recall it precisely, the Texas Rising Star program. And so those are daycares that I believe have financial aid for individuals that may not necessarily be able to afford to send their children there. And so it helps out programs that are already subsidizing their clientele, essentially.
Thank you, Brent.
So,
Go ahead, Nick.
okay, so here's my concern with this. It's taken a very, to me, it's taken a very narrow swath at certain daycares and not others. And I don't understand if they wrote an ordinance like this, why they wouldn't have made it more general to where, a lot more smaller daycares could have, helped them out too. Because to me, the smaller daycares are the ones that's to me, that's struggling. And I don't know, and I did ask last time when you all brought this up, exactly how many citizens this actually would help in Saginaw, okay? And I didn't get that. So I have a really hard time spending the citizens' money on something that I don't have quantitative data on that's actually truly going to, we can say, okay, we're going to help it, but I don't know how many people this is going to help. I don't know. I do know it's not helping all the young people who have children. I do know this. People my age don't have children. We got grandchildren. But I do have a daughter and a husband who has 2 children, and I know that they struggle with daycare. And I know that the daycare they go to, this won't fall underneath because that daycare just happens to be small, And so I struggle with that. It just, and then another in it, I went and read the one, there's no guarantee that these daycares won't just gobble up the money. There's nothing in that says they need to either prove what they're using the money for, or they pass that along to the individuals that it is supposed to be helping. So we'll call it trickle-down economics that some people hate. That there's no teeth in this to do that. So that's my concern with it.
Brent, my understanding it's only, we have 3 or 4 facilities in Saginaw that it will impact. Is that correct, Kim?
4, there's
4?
4 that would qualify,
Okay.
yes, sir.
And that's because they're in the Rising Stars program?
Rising Star program.
It's a Rising Star, I'm sorry. And so that's a state law, right? That's the Texas Rising.
That's correct. And I suppose if you're looking for any sort of incentive or basis for offering this, they have to continue to maintain their status in that Rising Star program, or they lose the exemption.
So is Texas Rising Star, is that a state?
Texas Workforce Commission is the one that runs Texas Rising Star.
Okay.
And they're
So
that have
so
CCMS.
they define that.
They define that, yes, and they have CCMS, which helps people that need support or money to help pay for their daycare. I'm sorry. And they fund CCMS people which need help with daycare, single parents, working parents, or whatever, and they get a discounted rate at a daycare, they pay it, and then sometimes they have to pay a little bit extra on the side. Not all daycares are Texas Rising Star for several reasons. One reason is because some of them don't have very many CCMS students. Some bigger daycares, up to half of their ratio could be CCMS people. So that's what that's for, is Texas Workforce Commission.
20% of the daycare population is required to be receiving subsidized tuition, for lack of a better word, by the Texas Workforce.
So for that daycare, 20% of that daycare?
Correct.
Okay, I got you. Thank you. All right.
And I have
Go ahead, Mary.
two other things, two other comments. The daycares that do have 20% receiving assistance, those are the ones that need this the most. So keep that in mind. And just coincidentally, I ran across an article just 2 days ago, I think, and it wasn't really talking about daycares, but it was talking about the big issue of the world aging and what kind of an economic impact that will have on the world. And that article was very wide-ranging, but even that article mentioned daycares. And I wrote down a quote. These are some suggestions that this article gave where countries can do whatever necessary to be prepared for the fact that our population is aging, and this is going to cause a problem economically across the world. And it said municipal governments could look at providing incentives to not require property taxes on child care facilities. So this just fits right into what we're talking about. So it's a big issue that it's not just local.
This would be an easier one for me to swallow if it covered all daycares in Saginaw, but it don't. It's taking a very narrow
Well, it
focus.
doesn't really need to. The ones that have the 20% population receiving care are the ones that need it the most, in my opinion.
All right, I've got two folks that have turned in requests to speak, and I can't really read this. Mayor Nilsson? Mark, I couldn't read, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Filippo and council. Mr. Lawson, it doesn't matter if you're a small daycare, mom and pop, that's what we are. We've been in Saginaw since 1979, serving the fine citizens of this community. I'm requesting that you go ahead and adopt 100% property tax exemption for child care centers. Several Texas cities, including Houston, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, and Denton, have implemented this exemption following the approval of Senate Bill 1145 and Proposition 2, which allows for property tax relief for child care facilities. The cities that have adopted this 100% exemption have seen significant benefits, such as enhanced financial stability for child care providers. By reducing property taxes, child care centers can allocate more resources toward improving their services and maintaining their operations. Increased affordability and access, lower operational costs can translate into reduced fees for families, making child care more accessible and affordable, which is crucial for working parents. Economic growth. Supporting child care centers helps working parents stay in the workforce, contributing to the local economy and overall community well-being. Implementing this exemption will demonstrate Saginaw's commitment to supporting families and local businesses, aligning with successful initiatives in other Texas cities. And I urge the City Council to grant this request for 100% exemption and continue to be a city on the right track. Thank you for your time, and it's coupled with daycares too, to give you guys an idea. Eagle Mountain ISD has implemented their universal pre-K. That's completely decimated our pre-K program. Our pre-K program is when you finally, in our world, daycare world, start making some money. You don't, because of the ratios. Infant ratios are 4 to 1, 4 babies to 1 teacher. It's, with them doing that, and we all know that's the biggest portion of our tax bill, right? The Eagle Mountain ISD, but that's hurt. That's really hurt. We used to have 2 pre-K classes, full, busting at the seams, with a waiting list. With free pre-K, we all know nothing's free. You're paying for it in your tax dollars, but it's decimated the daycares. It's why so many are closing. And with COVID trying to bounce back from that, it's difficult. So I just ask that you guys think through that a little bit. It's also a requirement that for landlords or for a business, childcare owners, if you take this exemption, you're required to use that by the state for the daycare to help with the families or help with buying toys or all these things that we have to do. So to your point, yeah, you don't want to see the trickle-down economy stuff going on, but it's a requirement for us that we have to pass that along to parents in one way or another. So, and it doesn't have anything to do with small daycares, mom and pops. We are one. So anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you, Mayor Flippo.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. All right, I also have Kristen Carnes.
Hi, thank you for allowing us to speak, and thank you for putting this on the agenda. I think I've been trying to put this on the agenda for about 3 months. I've had people from my office calling. So it was a really nice thing to hear that this was actually on the agenda. So Mark said a lot of what I was going to say. When this came down the pipeline and I knew that it was something to vote on, I let everybody know how this affects us. And it affects us in a big way. So I am the owner of Endless Discoveries Child Development Center. I started my business out of my home 21 years ago. And then we grew to a center, and I actually at this point have 3. So we've got them here in Saginaw, we've got one in Glen Rose, and we've got one in Hyco. So I have been working with not only, we've been working within each city as well as each county trying to get this approved. Like Mark said, we've got different counties that have approved it at 100%. Hayes County, Aransas County, El Paso County, Travis County, Harris County, Dallas County, and Bexar County. Cities that have approved at 100% is Denton, Austin, San Marcos, Houston, Arlington, Dallas, San Antonio, and Fort Worth. Tarrant County is actually having their meeting to discuss this on June 18th, so I'll be there as well. But this does, you were talking about the small centers, and I understand exactly what you're saying. Some of the requirements that the state has put on this don't include all centers. My center down in Glen Rose, we are Texas Rising Star, but we cannot get enough children to fit that 20% rule. And unfortunately, there is in that area there is a moratorium on giving out any more money. So we can't even get the children into the center to be able to provide that care because there is no money for them. We will provide that care, as you know, if they come to us, but. So I understand what you're saying about that, but in this city, in this county, we are able to. There are several of us here that this affects. we do meet each and every one of those qualifications. And the way that personally, with my business, the way that it would help us is my staff. We've got a lot of long-term tenured staff that, I mean, I pour into them and they pour into my families and my children. We also, we are accredited, we are Texas Rising Star. So all of that are, those are quality measures that we can just do to improve upon what we do on a daily basis. So I hope that, that y'all are able to think about that and think about how it would affect us beneficially in order and approve it at 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Our council, other questions, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I mean, there's some data here missing that's bothered me. One is, I'd really like to know how many children we have in Saginaw that fit into this category overall. And then I'd like to know, of those children in Saginaw that fit into the category that would benefit from this, how many of them are going to these 4 daycares?
Well, for one thing, I can tell you, on CCMS, that child doesn't have to live in Saginaw. A lot of
That's
times
why
they
I specifically said I want to know
Yeah.
how many kids in Saginaw.
I understand
And how
that,
many,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's just that a lot of times, a lot of centers like, I don't take CCMS anymore. I've
right.
cut ties May 31st. But they call and they ask, do you take CCMS? And they might be from, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but they might work here
Right.
or something. But there's a lot of daycare centers that don't take CCMS.
Right.
And so that would be kind of hard for them to, I mean, I'm sure the directors could tell you exactly how many kids in Saginaw are on CCMS, but, yeah.
I mean, again, way back at the beginning, when we was talking about the senior citizens, who's also a group, you know, there's a pie and there's a slice. And so if we take this slice, then that means somewhere else, you know, may or may not be more days. So we got to be careful here.
But this is a really small slice as well. Per Kim, how much money are we talking about if we do 100%?
It would be based on the previous values and our current tax rate, under $12,000.
Under $12,000?
Yes, sir, $11,948.
Okay. Right. Yeah, so it's a very, very small slice, and I think it's a nice thing to do for our child care facilities, and it costs the citizens very little, and it's a nice, and I like that it helps the folks that need it as well, that's the kids and the families that need it. If there's no discussion or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2024-08 with the 100% forgiveness.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
Paul, second? All right, cast your votes. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, guys. Good luck, folks. Hope this helps. All right, moving forward, item number 4B. Consideration action regarding letter of proposal for professional architectural and engineering services for the Saginaw John A. Keeter Building renovations. Jared Kersey, Assistant Director of Public Works.
Mayor, Council, good evening. I'm here tonight to present to you the proposal for the architectural and engineering services for the John A. Keeter Building next door to the renovations. It's been recommended by staff for us to go with PJL. When we met and discussed this, two of the guiding reasons. Number one, PJL had already done an assessment earlier on City Hall and the renovation of the John A. Keeter Building, and so they already had an upper hand of data and information to make a good proposal there. And then also seeing how they, the services they provided for the library and senior center and everything, we were very impressed with that, felt very comfortable with going with PJL. So, you know, obviously the number one priority of this renovation is office space. to house Public Works, building officials, and various City Hall staff. One of the areas, though, that staff is recommending moving forward is connectivity between City Hall and the John A. Keeter Building. We are looking at a full connection. We feel that would open up more storage capabilities and also future offices in the future, have a climate-controlled connectivity there. But at the very least, we also have the door open to at least do a covered walkway that staff and citizens can commute through. But as stated in the proposal, we are looking to fund this through ARPA funds. There is a deadline, December 31st of this year, 2024, to obligate that money under contract. Kim, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if we get it under contract by deadline, we have 2 years to use those funds. With approval tonight, something else that we would like to start, if we do get approval, is some projects that we could start early before the current library staff moves out. One being the replacement of the roof. It is in need of replacement, and that can also be funded through ARPA funds as well, which would be under the December 31st deadline. So we really need to start getting those types of things in gear. But also, with approval tonight, we would immediately start having meetings with PJL on the layout, and they are projecting about 11-month turnaround on the design plans. So I'm here to field any questions you may have.
Council questions for Jared? Mary, go ahead.
Just not a question, but I'm in favor of the full enclosure. I think that if you're going to renovate a building and make it better, you want to do the full job. And you want to protect people from going back and forth, from being in our extremely hot summers, our extremely cold winters, our storms. You know, we have people visiting that they might need to go in both parts of the building. And we have the ARPA funds, so I see no reason why we don't want to do the full job and continue what we're already doing with building such a fine building as the fire department and having 2 wonderful, senior center and library coming up. Let's keep that going, and let's make it wonderful and make it useful. And like you said, there could be storage. We could also put some historical pictures on the walls and maybe have some memorabilia in little bookcases. And, it should be a fully climate-controlled connection.
Other questions, council?
This isn't to actually start the construction. This is just the engineering architecture part of it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when you mention the roof would, we pass this today, the roof would be covered under that and would be able to get that through the ARPA funds?
Yes, we would be able to spend the ARPA funds on that, yes.
Okay. Now, is the roof something we could, the way I look at a roof, if it leaks, it causes other damages. So is there some way on something like that, or would we have to wait because if we put a new roof on there now, when we do, the remodeling, we'd have to cut holes through it and ruin it. So I'm just thinking, is that something we can move on now, or would we have to wait to see what the architecture design would be?
Well, we would definitely coordinate with the architects, but we're looking, I think we can replace the roof at this moment, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And would replacing the roof also be covered under the ARPA funds?
Yes, we would have ARPA funds available to purchase the roof, yes.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Brack, your question?
Yeah, just real quick, how much would we have left in ARPA funds if we approve this and do the roof?
The current balance of unobligated ARPA funds is about $742,000. So this contract is $498, would leave us about $244,000. So I think we need the architect's opinion, and before we move forward with the roof. That's, I think, one of the reasons why we were trying to do this. And we don't have an estimated cost of the roof yet either. But we're assuming it's going to be under the balance of $245,000.
Yes, we're in the process of getting quotes on the roof.
So sorry, the short answer is about $245,000 if this was to be approved.
So we do think that we can cover it with the ARPA funds we have, both of those.
Yes.
Okay. With understanding we haven't got the actual quotes.
Yeah, we don't have the actual.
Yes, sir,
Yes.
and I've been telling everybody on staff knows, we have a very strict deadline. All of the money needs to be obligated by December 31st, or we have to give it back, and we don't want to give it back.
How is it obligated? What do we have to do to make sure it's,
It has to be under contract.
okay, under contract? Gotcha. Excellent. Jared, can you tell who all's gonna, what all departments will move over there once we're done with this?
Public Work Administration, Environmental from Public Works, Planning from Public Works, Building Officials, I believe Janice will be there, Keith will be there.
Larry and his team as well?
Yes.
I got one more question. If we didn't spend this ARPA funds on this, what would we spend it on?
There's really quite a few things that you can spend it on. There's just a few restrictions. You can't add it to fund balance. You can't use it for retirement funds.
Well, I'm asking these guys, literally, what other projects do we have out there that we could then say, no, we don't want to spend it on this, so let's spend it, because we definitely want to spend it, right? Or we're going to lose it. Use it or lose it, right? So if I don't spend it on this, what other projects would you all think of? Is there anything else, or?
For Public Works, that's our most, I'm sure you've been to our building. up
Yep,
there.
yep.
I mean, it's a mess. So,
Yeah.
for us, this is number one.
No, okay.
At some point, the building and code compliance are going to have to move out of that depot too, and there's no place to put them, so that's a definite. I don't think there's a bigger need than this project.
That's what I was looking for, just to.
So, the depot, I've heard different things. Do we own that, or is that owned by BNSF? I know that they own the property,
We own the structure, but the railroad owns the property.
so we could relocate that and use it for whatever down the road? Or is it not worth it?
I guess we could attempt, I'm not sure how many, it's in pretty bad shape. Larry, you've been under, looking at it as far as moving it.
Well, it's fair and being, it could be moved, but I can't tell you the expense. I can tell you, I got an estimate to move to Missouri, because I fell in love with it, about $190,000. If I could give it to me, but it would be significant.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the condition or anything, because I remember when it was moved here, and I've seen some different cities that have utilized those for just like a
It's got-
banquet
it's got a
facility
lot of
and different things.
A lot of issues.
I know the railroad has some interest in it, though. We've been approached before, some of the railroad, they may have an interest in using it.
Really? Okay. Yeah, and I think it's important just to do something with this, the library building. It's a very valuable building in a great location. We need to make sure it's utilized fully to its extent. And I like the idea of having more of a front-facing public works folks here. Because a lot of people in Saginaw don't know where Brenda Lane is. Sorry. You guys are great, but they just don't know where y'all are. So I think it would be much better for customer service as well to have that folks right here in sort of our city center, our municipal center.
Much easier to tell them to go next door than down the street and get hit by a train.
All right, other questions for Jared? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the action regarding the letter of proposal for the professional architecture and engineering services for the city of Saginaw.
All right, Brack, second. Motion passes. Thank you, guys. Good luck.
So that means that they got to get that money spent before.
They're gonna. Randy's all over it. Right. All right, 4C, consideration action regarding ordinance 2024-09, amending rental inspection program. Fire Chief Doug Spears.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you recall, we had a detailed staff presentation and a lengthy council discussion over the rental inspection program. We recently had a property owner letting a family member occupy a property in town, and they had an inquiry about the applicability of the program for their situation. which really resulted in the conversations we've had and we're having now. At council direction, I think Bryn did a lot of research and prepared a really great ordinance to address that situation. Staff supports the rental inspection program and supports the ordinance that's proposed before you tonight, fixing that particular situation. So with that, I'd answer any questions that you have.
Can you read the ordinances?
Could I? I sure could.
It's huge.
It's pretty lengthy, but.
Summarize it so we can.
Well, maybe Bryn's a better person to do that since he drafted it, to give you the meat and potatoes, if he doesn't mind.
Sure, no, I don't mind at all. And actually, Councilmember Lawson was the inspiration, the impetus for this particular exemption. He referred me to the city of Dallas, which I've taken their concept and made it a little more straightforward. So there's a form in Dallas, and I've reviewed their ordinance. It basically says it's a defense to actual criminal prosecution if you are leasing to a family member. I thought that's a little too late in the process to actually opt out, right? If you're in court and you're having to raise it, that's a problem. So I advanced the process to basically make it an upfront process where the owner of the rental home is able to complete an affidavit swearing and attesting to the fact that they are related by blood or marriage to the tenant. But I also added at Councilmember Lawson's suggestion and request that in the event we can determine there's actual fraud, not only is the exemption lost, but that's an independent criminal violation. So I've added that language. I did spend some time to Councilmember Lawson's point about some other examples. Candidly, I could not find any other specific family exemptions.
Yeah.
The other exemptions I found, I'll just go through them quickly. Essentially, you could require just a registration program, no inspections at all. That's what I found. The city of Saxe does that. You don't have to let anybody in. Nobody comes on your property. You're basically just providing your information as the landlord in case the tenant has a concern and they don't know who their actual landlord is. That would essentially gut the program, right? And it's just sort of a registration program. Looking at the beginning of Austin's ordinance, it appeared that you aren't required to register for a rental inspection program unless you receive any violations in the first place. So that would be on a complaint basis only, which is problematic if a tenant is deterred in some way or fearful for reporting. The city of Rosenberg has an alternative program. Now, it's only for multifamily rental properties, but of course you could have it apply to single family, essentially where if you as the property owner secure your own third-party inspection, then you don't have to let the city in. You pay somebody to come and do the inspection and turn in the results of the inspection, and then the city counts that as you having been inspected by the city. So that's something that we could entertain. The final, City of Richardson, you're required to register and subject the exterior of your property to inspection only. Inviting code enforcement in is discretionary and optional, not mandatory. And so you could have a straight process like that, or I did see some variations of that. Basically, if code enforcement finds code violations on the outside of the property, that then triggers a mandatory interior inspection. But if there are no exterior code problems, it's done. Yeah. No one comes in your house and they're not allowed in. So those are the other examples I found. All of those leap over the narrow exception, right, and capture many more exceptions. Yeah. But I'll defer to you all on whether you want to make it more all-encompassing or whether you want to have more of a surgical, limited scope to the exception.
So, couple more comments, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
In staff's opinion, it's been a very successful program. There's been zero to no controversy except for this one situation. Obviously, we're really reactive to that particular situation. I think what Bryn's proposed here is an answer to that and still keeps the program effective. It's very common across the Metroplex. The same program we're operating is very common throughout multiple cities. It's really effective. I don't think we're going to see a slowdown in rental properties in the city. I think that will increase And certainly new developments we have are going to increase that too. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I'd like to say I spent a tremendous amount of time. I literally wore Larry out and Brent on this, looking up things, evaluating it, doing, well, what about this? What about this? I'm sure I've got a voodoo doll somewhere with a pin stuck through it somewhere over this. But you know, looking at this and looking at it, it's to Tartarian, the whole part, everything. I thought that it really hits a pretty decent balance after it's all said and done and everything. And I do want to say that I really appreciate the team really digging into this and looking at all of those different areas. One other thing that's not here that I also want to point out that we passed was to come up with and update our website for helpful links, and I'll tell y'all, they did a really good job. I went and looked at it. It has stuff pointing back to the state to really, because that's the whole point of this, is to help people see where to go get help and to give them assistance. And that webpage, I was pretty impressed with it. So with both of those, I thought just overall the intent was very well met. Appreciate it.
Good.
Excellent. Good work. Mary, go ahead.
I'm opposed to this amendment. I feel like it unnecessarily weakens the ordinance. There is no guarantee that if you own a home and you allow a relative to live in it, there's no guarantee that the owner and/or the relative living in the home are going to be responsible. Just because you're related to somebody doesn't mean your home doesn't need to be inspected. I went with the rental inspection group 2 or 3 years ago on inspecting several homes, and one of the homes that was inspected was wonderful. It looked wonderful. It was neat and clean, and just so happens when we went into the garage, an area that was difficult to see in that garage had some wiring problems that apparently the homeowner and the renter, neither one were aware of. So these ordinances are put in place for safety purposes. That is what we are here for, to uphold the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. Having a relative live in a home is no guarantee that you don't need to be inspected. So I'm opposed to the amendment. I think the ordinance should stand as it is.
So I'd like to state, renters are citizens and they got rights, okay? Specifically, they got the Fourth and Fifth Amendment right. And to me, if we don't at least give them some option to do that, then I really struggle why we're not inspecting all houses. Because what you're saying to me then is that a renter is not smart enough to figure things out. And all houses here have to go through, when they get built, they got to go through a regular inspection. They got to get an occupancy, just like my house. If I go to run a new outlet, by law, I'm supposed to pull a permit, okay? So all of this is all the same. So if you're going to say it and you say, no, we need to keep it the same way, then we need to change the ordinance to every house in Saginaw, every house, because you can't say that I have more knowledge on these state ordinances than somebody who's a renter. The guy may be a renter. He may be, he may be an electrician, okay, but just maybe young, okay? My son is an electrician, and he's a renter, okay? He knows more about electricity than probably most people because he's a certified through the state electrician, okay? So I think really, they could say, I think this gives a fine balance of giving our citizens, okay? And renters are not second-class citizens, okay? It gives them, and the Supreme Court has said this is considered the most holy of places to go in the house. It gives them protection that, that we're not unnecessarily, intruding upon their privacy, okay? So that's just my point.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
this is not a criticism of renters. When I was growing up, most of my life, I lived in rental properties. This does not mean that renters are not knowledgeable. Renters like this program. It gives them teeth to force the homeowner to make sure things get corrected. Also, Larry did show us a situation a year or two ago where a rental property occupied by a relative was in complete disarray, and makes that TV show about hoarders look like the Taj Mahal. So we have had an example of that in our city. I am not criticizing renters. They are not second-class citizens, and they do not have a lack of knowledge. They need this program, and they like this program, and they don't want it watered down.
All right, council, other questions, comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we, let's see, which one is this?
4C.
4C. I move that we accept 4C ordinance 2024-09 as written.
Okay. Do I have a second? All second? Please cast your votes. All right, motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. Thank you, guys. Congratulations. Thank you, guys, on the hard work. Appreciate that. I hope it is very successful. 4D, consideration action regarding purchase of a portable restroom trailer. Randy Newsom.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is being brought forward to you from the Park Board. We kicked around the idea of, we need additional restroom facilities down there at the switchyard. We looked at the prefab units, for one that has the number of units, restroom facilities that we wanted to have down there. We're looking at about $450,000. So we went back, one of the board members on the Park Board mentioned, if we stayed with what we have, it goes rent trailers. Well, that kind of got me thinking, so I went back and started looking around to see if we could purchase one. So I got some prices, and I found one that is available. So I took it back to the Park Board, and we discussed it, and they wanted to move forward with getting the trailer. I saw one. The city of Weatherford has one at their second Monday, sitting on a slab over there. That's what they do with it. So the intent with this trailer unit would be for us to pour slab down there at the switchyard to house that when we have events down there, concert in the park, the farmer's market, the Christmas parade, all of those events that are down there. We would place it in place, use it, come down there and pick it up, take it back up to the shop, clean it up, put it underneath the awning until we have it used it for the next event. The restroom facility we have down there right now existing today, on a day-to-day basis, it's fine. It doesn't have any issues with, needing, people lined up out there to get in it. So it would, continue to serve a purpose for what we have it down there for right now. So the ask is for, I'm still getting some quotes because this kind of we're trying to rush through to get this thing. If we can get it ordered up or get it placed, order placed, I think we could have it by the July 4th event for the 4th of July for the fireworks, which would save us having to rent one. It also has a handicap unit on the end of it that lowers down, comes with the ramp and everything. So, it is climate controlled, very nice. If you've seen your packet, it's a very, very, very nice trailer.
How easy is it to move? Does it have wheels on it? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like a trailer.
Just like a trailer, okay. Council questions?
Do we have to have somebody come dump it?
No, we can dump it.
You what?
We dump it.
Y'all dump it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how many people can it service at one time?
So it's got 4 stalls for women. It's got a handicap stall, two stalls for men, and a urinal. 2 sinks in each side.
Okay.
And a sink in the handicap.
How was, for electricity and stuff, are you gonna run power to it, or is it
We're
gonna
gonna
be a
run
generator?
we're gonna run a power stub up for it off of the stuff we have down there. At the, like, 4th of July and stuff over there at the high school, for a training grain event, we would pull the generator over there.
So when we get this thing and first get it set up, instead of have a ribbon cutting, we're gonna have a flushing?
We can do that.
You want to be the first to use it, Nikki?
Hey.
That's all you, brother. Other questions? Mary, please.
Is this similar to the one they have been having the past 2 years, I think, at the Training Grain?
Yes, but
It seems even better.
It's bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
has
think
more
that
stalls.
would be great.
Plus, the climate control is a lot better than what we would have there, and the reduction in vandalism is gonna be huge.
Yes.
It's a great idea. It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that's right, the vandalism, because I've been to several parks where they put in really nice restrooms, and you come back in like a month, and they're just trashed. So, yeah, like this.
Back here, please.
I don't have a question.
This also leaves them a little bit more money, that they have that playground that's down there by the dog park. They initially wanted to replace that one, but we just didn't have enough funds, but, so we think we have enough money that we can now go back and catch that.
Nice. Even better. Any other questions for Randy? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a
Mayor
motion.
Brack?
I'll second.
Let's vote.
Man, that was quick.
I know. You didn't even hear it, did you?
Motion passes. Thank you, guys. Great work, and I like the innovation and the thinking outside the box. That's cool. And Nikki called first dib, so he gets to go first. All right, we do have an executive session, so pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations, we will at 7:56 move into executive session. We will return to adjourn. Just waiting on everybody to get back in. Everybody here? All right, at 8:04, I call us back in the normal session. Motion to adjourn. Valerie, Brack, second. Cast your votes. At 8:04, we are adjourned. Thank y'all. Please turn off your microphone.
Hey, Todd? Since most of the council's left-handed, I think